What's up, boys? It's TheDuelFactory once again with another video. This time I am going to be doing another deck profile, and it's going to be a Invoked Dogmatka Shaddoll. A couple weeks ago I went on vacation, and I was actually able to go to a locals for the first time in God knows how long, especially with the COVID-19 restrictions, and I wanted to play something that was like a mid-range deck. It's something I really liked, and as many of you know, for longtime followers of the channel, I was really big in the Shaddolls back in 2015 when the deck was out, and that's actually what was my deck of choice. With Construct back to 3, we have the Dogmatka cards now, and Alistair being essentially just more fusion spells for the deck. I think it's really good right now. The only problem is Buster Lock is a big issue, and decks like Infernoble, who can take a peek out of your hand, can take your power cards out of your hand, like Shaddoll Fusion and stuff like that. But nonetheless, I think it's a really good strategy to play, especially if you don't want to play like a meta-defining strategy. You just want to play something that, like I said, is either tier 2 or mid-range. I feel like this is a solid deck choice for you right now. But enough about that, we'll get into the deck profile. But as some of you might have already noticed, we have started doing the X2 Drop podcast again. So don't forget to go check that out. I'll have links in the description below about where you can actually go and listen to the podcast from me and Bingo HD. We just start, like I said, we just started doing it again. It's actually really exciting. And then for those of you who haven't noticed, whenever I have been posting deck profiles, if you don't want to watch the entire video, I completely understand. There is also a link in the description to a dueling book link of every deck that I put in there now. So don't forget to check that out if you don't actually want to watch a profile and you just want the list. But let's go ahead and get into it. So starting off, we only play 2 copies of Alistair. It's kind of weird, but I kind of like the number, the ratio in the actual deck itself of like invoked cards, Shaddoll cards, and Dogmatka cards, which I believe it's like an 8-8-8 split or something like that. I believe it, but believe it or not, you actually don't really want to see Alistair in this deck, because if nothing else, he's just another fusion spell, but you need something to search off Magical Meltdown, which is the actual card that you want to see, because Meltdown in this deck is just insane. But yeah, 2 copies of Alistair, and it's honestly, you see it when you need it, and like I said, it's just another fusion spell, technically. For the Shaddoll monsters, we play 2 Red Shaddoll Windy. I want to play 3, but you have to have room in the deck for the actual engines in the deck, so we play that. We also play 2 Squamata. If I had room for 3 of each of these cards, I would, because they're the best monsters to fuse with. But like I said, 2 and 2 for now. And then the rest of the Shaddolls we play is 1 of utility. So 1 Hedgehog to search, 1 Beast to draw, and it's actually really good in the mirror if you come across it. 1 Aerial for the DD Crow effect, and also sometimes the being able to bring back from the banish pile does come up. And then 1 copy of Dragon to remove a back row. We don't play any copies of Falco. I don't think the card's necessary. And that is 8 Shaddoll monsters. And then for the Dogmatka monsters, we play 1 copy of Ecclesia and 1 copy of Fleur-de-Lis. So it's not like most Dogmatka engines where you max out on Ecclesia and you play 1 to 2 copies of Fleur-de-Lis. And I'm playing no Maximus in the main deck. It's in the side deck because I don't think it's a very good game 1. But in this deck, it's kind of unique because you can send Ecclesia off of Shaddoll Fusion when you fuse from the deck. And then Nadir Servant isn't limited to adding the monsters from your deck to hand. It also adds back from graveyard. So you really only need to see the 1. So that's why we're only playing 2 copies of the Dogmatka cards. Plus, you really just want to see Nadir Servant because it's really good at applying pressure to your opponent, which is something the Shaddoll cards by themselves are very good at. So it just ensures that you're just pushing through everything that your opponent has to offer. It makes going second really good too. So that's the main deck monsters. Onto the hand traps. We are playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. It's the best generic hand trap that we have access to currently. Not much to say about it. We'll continue playing it for the format. Another hand trap we're playing, because it's a light hand trap, is Gambit. Gambit just, to me personally, I think it's the best high impact hand trap next to Nibiru, which I'm not playing Nib in this main deck. I do want to change up my hand trap lineup. But for what I played at the locals, I played I think 2 total locals with it. These were the hand traps that I played. But yeah, it's a light hand trap. It has a lot of synergy. Plus, you can also send the driver off of Shaddoll Fusion, so you can take the brick out of your deck, which is probably my favorite thing to do. And then the last 2 hand traps we played 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. The locals I went to is littered with Rogue, and this card's really good against Rogue. Plus, it's also really good against some of the meta-defining strategies. A well-timed Ogre actually puts it into a lot of your opponent's play, especially with some of the newer decks that are being played. It's really good against Zoo, so keep that in mind. So that's the hand traps. And then on to the actual spell cards. The best card in the deck, by far, Magical Meltdown. So once you know like the actual interactions of what this card does, it makes Shaddoll Fusion the most lethal card in your deck. Especially since your opponent can't respond to the fusion summon of the monster, so like all your Shaddoll monsters are resolving for free without interruption. They can't stop Shaddoll Fusion unless they have cards like Dimensional Barrier or anything like that, which has seen some play, but not. But like this card, like when you resolve it and you stick a fusion spell, there should be no possible way that you're losing. We're playing a Terraforming to get to it, and then on to the actual fusion spells themselves. We play 2 copies of Invo. Like I said, they're just more fusion spells for the Shaddoll strategy. If you're not fusing, you're losing. So we're also not playing Desires in the deck, so I don't see a need to play 3 at the moment. We're playing 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion. Like I said, when you resolve this with Meltdown, you shouldn't lose at all. And then 3 copies of El Shaddoll Fusion. It's not nearly as good as it was back in its actual format, but like you need to see a fusion spell, so I think maxing out on the actual Shaddoll fusion spells is the most important part because they're not searchable other than a set Hedgehog, but that's really slow. You can also search them through Shaddoll El Shaddoll Ab Cologne, but you have to resolve an Nadir Servant for that, which really kind of sucks. Speaking of, probably the best card in the deck is Nadir Servant. The more and more I play this card, I don't actually think Konami knows what they were doing when they actually printed this, because this card is insane. It lets you do way, way too many things. And then the 1-0s, we play 1 Upstart and 1 Cold by the Grave. You kind of need to play these cards for consistency. Plus, you want your Shaddoll Fusion to resolve, as strange as that sounds. Yes, it does turn off like your own Ash Blossoms and stuff like that if you have one in hand, but sometimes you need it to resolve, like you don't have a choice. And then the 2 trap cards we play in the deck, 1 Schism and 1 Dogmatka Punishment. This card's insane. Like, if you stick it on the field, it's very, very hard to lose. So the idea of the deck is, if you see the numbers, like, if you see 1 engine, you're alright. If you see 2 engines, you're in a really good position. But if you see all 3 engines, you're broken. You can't lose. And I see all my engines quite consistently. So I'm actually really happy with how the main deck came out. On to the extra deck. Shout out to the sweet Field Center that I finally got. I finally picked up one from Stay Classy LLC that I really like. So don't forget, go check them out. They're really cool. Really like these Field Centers. But for my list, I'm playing 3 copies of... Hold on, let me refocus the camera there. I didn't realize that. There we go. But anyway, I'm playing 3 copies of El Shaddoll Constructs. A lot of Invoked Shaddoll lists only play 2. My theory is when you run out of windows, the game's over. So I think you have to play the X amount of copies that you can. But obviously that could change. 2 copies of Window. This card's really broken with Schism. And then 2 copies of Ab Cologne. You're actually sending this off Nadir Servant most of the time because you want to be able to search Schism or a fusion spell whenever you need it. So that card's really good. And that's actually it for the Shaddoll monsters. For the Invoked monsters, we actually have it really short. So we play 2 Macabre because it's the best one. And then we play 1 Ogades. We're not playing Purgatorio at all. The way I've seen it, Purgatorio has been coming up less and less. For me, personally. And half the time you're already pushing for game anyway, so I feel like it's unnecessary. So I cut it to make room for the 3rd construct. And I summon 3 constructs a lot. So having the freedom to have that actually just changed up the deck's perspective. Like, it's really good. Just try it. 1 Covenant Ents for Nadir Servant and the sideboard Maximus. And that's it for the fusion monsters. And then the last part of the deck, which is the actual Link monsters, and they're all necessary for the Invoked Shaddoll Dogmatka strategy. So you play 1 Salomon Great for your Alistair, Secure Gardena for the Almirage. You need a generic Link too, so you play land because it also has synergy with Gamma, and then 1 copy of Gravity Controller. And that was my Shaddoll Invoked Dogmatka deck list. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to check out the podcast, and we'll catch you guys in the next video, which I'm hoping is going to be a Zodiac deck profile. I'm not 100% sure yet. But like I said, like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to check us out. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.